Welcome to our business breakfast segment, and we have with us this morning Mr. Chike Farrell, national scholar, graduate of MIT, and co-founder and CEO of Caribbean Ideas Ltd. Welcome,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Farrell.
sir. Excellent to see you.
Excellent to see you too. So tell me, what is the intention of Caribbean Ideas Limited? What's your strategic direction for this particular entity?
Sure. So the genesis of Caribbean Ideas actually started about 5 years ago, right? I was actually at Microsoft headquarters in, rainy, wet Seattle, Washington, working in the online and online advertising division, and really started getting curious about the direction for digital and online advertising in the Caribbean. So about 4 years ago, founded Caribbean Ideas with a co-founder, Brevard Nelson. And we're really sort of playing in two spheres. Today, primarily, we're a digital marketing solutions company. So we help advertisers and communicators use digital technology to better reach and engage their target customers.
Now, when you talk about digital technology, is it that we're talking about this whole online revolution that's taking place? YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Google. This is the wave of the future kind of advertising.
Exactly. So this is all about primarily web and mobile technology in sort of our definition. The mediums that are now taking over the way that people spend time and the way that they consume media. They are not obviously the only ways that people do that, but they are going to be increasingly important and have become increasingly important. So that then translates into every aspect of social media, to the content that people consume on websites, to the way that they utilize their mobile phones. It's basically shifting the way that any communicator, any business leader needs to think about, well, how do I reach this audience? How have the rules changed in terms of how I engage them, in terms of being much more two-way dialogue, for example? And so it does require a shift in any marketer or communicator's thinking.
And how effectively are we using this new media in this part of the world?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was actually just looking at some of the more recent statistics. In a lot of the larger Caribbean countries, English speaking primarily, we have over 2 million Facebook profiles, for example. Stats have been bandied about for a long time about how high our mobile penetration is, right?
Yes,
And so not only does everyone have a phone within 2-3 feet, many people have two right?
Phones, yes.
And so you have these interesting sort of dimensions to our usage. Now you say, okay, well, let's compare that to the developed world, 75% internet penetration and that sort of thing. But we are just taking off and have been taking off over the last decade, for example. And the developed world gives us a pretty good glimpse of what's coming, right? So as broadband becomes more prevalent, in the budget just a couple of weeks ago, there was conversation about, making broadband more prevalent, for example. As the prices come down, broadband becomes more accessible.
Yeah.
It just creates a dramatic shift in the way that people consume media. They start looking at video and more video. They start watching whole TV shows, which people are doing already. But as it becomes more prevalent, these things are the harbingers of the shift.
Yes.
And that any business leader or marketer needs to think about.
But I mean, with this kind of tectonic shift in how people consume this content, how they get their news, how they get their entertainment, what are the business opportunities in all of this? How can our entrepreneurs really utilize these new platforms to generate new income streams?
Great. So when I was sort of talking at the start, I said, today we are primarily a digital marketing company, but we also look at what we think of as a digital media business as well as being one that's interesting, because there are a host of opportunities in terms of content, for example, right? Content delivery via web, via mobile. There are services that have been springing up. They maybe are not being monetized fully yet, that are 100%, BlackBerry, there's sites out there, find it, where's the best doubles vendor, all those sorts of things. And so there's an immense opportunity in terms of creating services that are delivered digitally for any entrepreneur that's out there. There are also opportunities in terms of information because, you know, I always say it's not a business that, you know, I'm going into necessarily, but if I had dollars to throw in, I would back the business that makes it easier to understand how people are spending time digitally and where they're spending time, because that information is increasingly valuable to communicators and businesses alike. So there are lots of opportunities.
Let me drill this down a bit.
Right.
Let's deal with a practical example. Is there any point to a roti shop having a website? Is there any point to a roti shop having a Twitter account?
Right.
Do you really see that as a means to generate additional business for a particular retailer distributor in our environment?
Okay, so let's talk about the way that things have changed, because I think that is in sort of an important part of thinking about, you know, should I have digital presence or should I not? Now, we work with very large blue chip brands across a range of sectors, from energy to education to financial services and that sort of thing. And we also have worked with, you know, smaller up and coming businesses as well. And really the fundamental things are this. In this world, particularly if your audience skews younger.
Right.
Particularly. Now, most businesses have audiences in a range of age segments. But if your audience skews younger, there are a few things that have changed. That audience now has grown up in a world where brands are accessible and they believe that they should be accessible. They've grown up in a world where they believe in two-way dialogue. In other words, Mr. Roti Shop, if I didn't like what you gave me, right? If my roti skin wasn't fluffy enough, I'm going online and I'm going to talk about it. Okay? And I actually want to hear what you have to say. So, in my view, if you have customers, period, you should be thinking about how many of them spend time digitally. Where do they spend time? So not everyone needs to have a Twitter account or necessarily a website. It depends on what their customer base looks like. But if my customer base won't come to my website, but they spend a lot of time in Facebook, I should be there, right? And I should be building that two-way dialogue and relationship with them in that medium, as one example.
Excellent. Now, the unfortunate thing is that with all of these new opportunities emanating from these digital platforms, there are some negative social consequences as well, and we've seen some of that, you know, in recent time. How do we ensure that our young people, these new users, are being properly educated about proper usage of these sites, lest they find themselves in hot water? You know, should they be a little too liberal? You know, in their posting of content and commentary and opinions and so on.
Yeah, so you know, that's an interesting point, because, you know, it's sort of an environment where most folks, particularly the younger folks, they just kind of fall into it. You know, it's like an extension of their fingers, practically, between their Blackberries and their, you know, iPhones and so on and so forth, or just being on the computer. And because in many cases parents and so on are, you know, this is like, okay, you know, go do your technology thing. Folks are sort of left to their own devices, right? So one of the things that can kind of impact that would be having, you know, parents and teachers and so on understand, well, hey, what is going on here, and helping to set out the guidelines far earlier, for example, right? Because otherwise it's going to just become a, you know, social norms thing. And this really impacts the younger folks, right? So we're giving out laptops, you know, to younger and younger students, and we should. But that would be where you can do things like that to incorporate. And there are also, of course, you know, various software options for parents and so on who want to screen, you know, again, for the younger kids, I'd sort of recommend that, and help bring them along so that they utilize these mediums in the right way.